Welcome to this week's MTD podcast. In this podcast, we will be discussing how we can bridge the technology gap with SolidCAM. I'm Gio Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a proud member of the MTD team. I have the pleasure to be joined by Ian Llewellyn from SolidCAM UK, Business and Development Manager. And it's a great day to be doing this podcast, Ian. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Gio. Thank you very much for having me on board.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, Ian. Thank you for joining us. Ian, you've got many years' experience in the manufacturing industry. I think it's only right if you can first tell our audience a little bit about yourself and about the experiences that you've had in the industry and about your expertise, please.
Okay. After a bit of a slow start from school, I had a spell in the RAF which didn't particularly work out. I then decided to move into engineering, and having a relative who was a machinist, he invited me to come and have a go at being a manual machinist, which I did at Mason & Pinder Toolmakers. So I went through like an unofficial apprenticeship because I was too old to be an apprentice, learning the manual machines, and kind of from there they pushed me forward onto running CNC machines, which they recently purchased. That kind of led on to learning CADCAM as well, because they just invested in that. So they were very early adopters of new technology. So I spent nearly 12 years with Mason & Pinder Toolmakers before kind of branching out and having a look at what else was available, where I joined Plasmold, who were in Leeds at the time. And while I was there, I was approached by NC Graphics, who were a CAD-CAM vendor at the time. So I spent several years with those as a demonstrator, where I then moved into sales through no fault of my own, really. I kind of fell into the position. And after they were acquired by Vero Software, I then moved on to being a sales manager for Vero Software. All in all, did nearly 23 years with those guys. So I spent a lot of time going around tool rooms, press tools, mold tools, die casting shops. And like I say, after 23 years, I kind of got itchy feet again, I suppose, and wanted to have a look at what else is available. Did a bit of a spell for CG Tech on VeriCut, working with some very, very clever people and some very clever software. And then the opportunity came up to work for SolidCAM, which I thought was a good move for me, certainly with the kind of technologies that they were looking at. So joined those guys last November. So I've had kind of 6 months with them.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, that's a great insight into your kind of background, really. Now, how important is it, in your opinion, to have had that toolmaker experience, to add that experience on the machine tools, programming to make components before you got into CAD-CAM and the programming and the design?
I felt it was really important, predominantly because when I was doing the CAD-CAM side of it, I actually had an understanding of what it took to machine it and what it took to put those tools together. So you could look at a component that had been sent in from a customer and instantly look at it and go, you're never going to be able to make that. It's just the wrong shape. It's in the wrong orientation. So I think having that background made life a lot easier going into CAD-CAM. And I think then moving from a CAD-CAM user to being CAD-CAM technical and CAD-CAM sales, having that wealth of experience in the background meant that I could talk to customers on a technical level. I could understand what they were trying to achieve, and rather than giving them the big sell, I was actually looking at their problem and looking how I could resolve those problems with the software that I'd got.
No, it's fascinating, really, and I couldn't agree with you more. You need to be able to know how to make a component first before you can design and program.
Absolutely, yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. For the listeners that are listening to this podcast that may not be familiar with CAD-CAM, CADCAM stands for Computer Aided Design and Computer Aided Manufacturing. And this is now really evolved over the years. Now, we're basing this podcast around bridging the technology gap. How can this be achieved with software, and why is CAD/CAM so important nowadays, Ian?
I think having the ability to design things electronically in the CAD side of things, being able to look at a component and the way that technology's moved on, you can look at how parts can be assembled within the CAD side, the CAD environment, and instantaneously you can look and see that's not going to work, or that's going to work, or maybe if we change that, that's going to make things better. So having that electronic capability means that before you even start going into manufacture, you've got a pretty good insight as to whether or not that component's going to be manufacturable. So I think it's very important, and it also means that whilst we may have reduced the skills requirement for people making patterns, which is historically what they used to do, they'd make a wooden pattern, they'd check it over, the customer would look at the wooden part and go, yeah, I'm happy with that, and then they would start tracing it on copy mills, which reduce flexibility in producing them. So that's where the CAM environment comes in, and gives you that ability to machine things in a better manner and using different tools rather than the same size as the stylus it used to scan it with.
Wow, I mean
So
that's took me back a long day when you say about
yeah, I'm just
the
showing how old I am, aren't I?
well, it's funny you should say that when you mention the wood models. I'd done my work experience whilst I was still at school at a company at the time called MPL, Nuneaton Pattern,
Yeah, I know them. Yeah,
in Nuneaton. And when I'd done
yeah,
my work experience there, I'm sure at the time they were making kind of the cars, the shape of the cars out of wood. I mean, the skill involved in that was
yeah.
absolutely phenomenal, and that kind of inspired me to get into engineering, really, and then on to becoming a toolmaker, and I kind of fell into sales myself, Ian. So kind of similar paths in that respect. Now, you know, with you mentioned the skills gap and bridging the skills gap and the simplification of programming. I mean, is there still a need to program directly into the machine tool?
Um, I think there maybe is to a degree. The problem is that it's time consuming, and it doesn't matter how good your machine operator is. While ever he's doing programming at the machine's not running. And if it's not running, it's not making money, which unfortunately is that's the end goal of every company, is they've got to make money. And if you program it offline, that means that potentially that machine could run through the night unmanned, providing it was a suitable program, which means that lights out machining is profitable.
But what if
Um,
you're doing one-offs though, Ian? Or
Yeah,
kind of
it still works with one-offs. I mean, everything I've ever done has been one-offs with being in tool making. So most mold tools are a one-off. What you've got to look at is the process that you're machining it with, which again leads back to the fact that you need good technology. You need good CAD/CAM capability so that you can check what you've done or what you're doing in process before you commit it to the machine tool. So that way, what runs through on the machine is going to be accurate and it's going to be correct. And providing you set the conditions up properly, you shouldn't have any problem.
Yeah, so what you're saying effectively, Ian, is that you're making your mistakes in the cloud, you're making your mistakes
Yeah.
digitally, and you're not scrapping the components either. So you're
Yep.
getting the components right first time. Um,
That's it. That's the goal, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely, 100%. And our tagline for Swarf and Chips, which we do, is keep them spindles turning. It's absolutely essential, and
Yeah.
it is the key to profitability and efficiency, especially when you're paying a lot of money for your machine tool. You need to get a return of investment. Now, Ian,
Yep.
with so many providers out there and so many different solutions, what makes your solution so different to others?
I think what drew me to SolidCAM was the technologies that they've got and the technologies that were emerging. One of the big things for me is sliding head lathes, Swiss style sliding head lathes. There's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them are programmed manually, which is very, very time consuming. And the reason for that is that there aren't that many companies who can actually produce good post processors for these very, very complex machines. And I saw SolidCAM before I joined the company, and I knew from all my years working in CADCAM how difficult a process this was. And I saw how advanced, even before I joined the company, sort of 12, 15 months ago, how far they'd already got with this technology. And then when I started looking at what else had got available, being able to machine using barrel cutters in 5-axis, so 5-axis simultaneous, using these new types of tools, as well as a Swiss style. The eye machining caught my eye because of how quick you could rough material out, saving 70 to 80% on a conventional roughing program, just because of this built-in technology, for me made a massive difference.
I mean, when you kind of state them kind of figures, 70% cycle reductions, they sound unrealistic, don't they, Ian? Do you have to prove that you can do that? If a potential client came along to you, showed you a component, you did a time study on that component, do you need to prove the pudding as such before?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons for having the tech centre up in Barnsley. We've got a big 3-axis mill. For Mac, we'd got a new 5-axis mill coming in to Mac and then onto the workshop, which will probably just end up direct to the workshop before January, when Mac's going to be again. We've got the technology at Barnsley to be able to prove our claims, if you like, and we've also got the cooperation of the tooling companies and the work holding companies, and these kind of guys are quite happy for us to say, we're going to do a test on a component for a customer. We need to prove that we can save 70, 80%. We invite the customers into the workshop to be able to see it happening. And I think once they've seen it, like you said, it's a bit of a disbelief initially. It's a big claim to make, 70%. But when you actually start showing them and seeing how quick it does it, it almost sells itself, I suppose.
Well, I suppose it's an instant return of investment. If you're knocking off 70%, it's how can you turn that down?
Well, that's what you think, wouldn't you?
Well, definitely, Ian, definitely. I mean, I've had the pleasure to be presented in the past at one of the seminars held at SolidCAM, and I do like the fact that you get work holding suppliers, tooling suppliers, machine tool suppliers involved with these seminars, because you really hit the nail on the head there. It's not just about one part of the process, it's about the complete processes. And if there's a weak link, the process will be flawed because of that weak link. And being able to kind of illustrate your software working in conjunction with your partners is a very important thing.
Absolutely. I think without the partners, we would struggle. You've got to have that complete solution. You've got to have people who understand what we're trying to achieve, as well as showing their own products. It's kind of got to be a group solution, if you like. And I think more and more customers or potential customers are wanting to see how your software interacts with other products. So like being able to directly output to VeriCut makes a massive difference. We have tool tables where we can import tooling data from our partners as well. So all this kind of information kind of gives it's not a turnkey solution, but you can go to a customer and go, actually, that's the solution that's going to get you the results you want.
So you're not just offering solutions on your own product, but other products too?
Yeah, we've got to look around at what other partners have got available, and we will go to different tooling companies because they have something specific that's going to work better for what we're trying to push in front of the customer. So we're not just tied into one partner for one product. We open our doors to everybody that's in the industry to say, come and work with us, show your capabilities alongside ours, and then the customer gets the best end result.
Yeah. That's a really good point, and it's a very it's a great way to work. Now, Ian, we spoke to Ben recently and Mark about the new software and CAD/CAM packages that you have available for the sliding head market. I've been seeing some of your videos as well, demonstrations on this, and I've got to admit, it does look extremely impressive. Ben's mentioned it simplifies the programming and some of the other unique benefits that it has. But in your opinion and in your words, what makes this special?
I think what makes it different in SolidCAM for handling the Swiss type machines or the sliding head lathes, whichever you want to call them, is having the ability to control the environment, because you've got so much going on. You've got multiple spindles, multiple tools, all moving at the same time. So within the software, we're able to monitor all that activity and make sure that nothing clashes with anything. We have the channel management system, which instantly flags up if there's any problems. But for me, the most important part is the ability to be able to take that information and then sending it out to a post processor for the multiple machines that are available within the industry and get a correct output. So being able to send that data to the machines and know that it's going to work properly is, for me, is probably the biggest key point.
Collision avoidance, I would assume that, like you mentioned, it is a massive feature because you've got so much going on in such a small space. Does it take into consideration the way in which tools are set, etc.?
Absolutely, it needs to know everything because, like you said, it's such a small environment and there's so much going on. Um, we need to know where every tool is. We need to know where every spindle is. We need to know the length of every drill. What station they're in. So we need to have that complete control over everything within that working envelope. And like I say, we have the channel management, which is part of the software, which tracks everything moving simultaneously. And if it's not going to work, if there's going to be a problem, it instantly flags it up before any of those problems can be sent to the machine.
So again, really going back on what you said previously, Ian, that sliding head machine can be running its components whilst someone else in the office or someone in the office is writing the next program, proving it all out. So when that job finishes, the next one's just simply ready to go, and you can just press the button in complete confidence.
Yeah, that's for me, and the key to this is how to bridge the technology gap. Having that machine working is what's earning the customer money. You know, that's what's making their profit. If you've got somebody upstairs who can go through all the changes and the inspection and the collision checking before it gets anywhere near the machine, then once the bar's loaded up, once your tools are loaded up, you press go with complete confidence that that's going to produce the number of parts that you require. So, removing that downtime on the machine for somebody to go through each stage manually, for me, is a massive jump.
So, you mentioned earlier on in the podcast, there's still a lot of people that have sliding head technology that are still programming them manually. For the people and engineers that invest in this new technology and software and bridge that gap, is it going to be a game changer for them? Are they going to leapfrog their competition, in your opinion?
I think they're going to have to do. You can't be any other way, because if you're suddenly having your machine running, 99 hours out of 100 because it's all pre-programmed, that's got to be far more profitable. That's got to put you in front of the people that are still stood there, and some of these parts can be so complex, they could take days to program if you're doing it manually. I'm not saying that it's going to be a much quicker process doing it in the CAD/CAM system. But what it does do is it allows you to get in front, because once you've got one of your parts programmed, you'll be running tens of thousands of parts off anyway. So you've got the time for your operator, for your CAD-CAM operator, to start producing your next set of components. So for me, it's got to leap you forward from your competition.
100%. And I think you've made some really valid points there. And I'm sure for people that are listening to this podcast, please get in touch to find out more, And you're also doing seminars and training activity, which if you could tell us a little bit more about that, especially whilst we've been in this COVID-19 kind of lockdown phase.
Well, SolidCAM have always tried to put on seminars within the workshop. So, we invite customers and we invite prospects to come and look at what we're doing. Again, this is when the partners get involved. Obviously, with the lockdown, that's been proved to be impossible. So what we're producing now is more and more webinars, seminars, and trying to create more information online in conjunction with yourselves, obviously, as well. So it's the new today, isn't it? We're having to adapt. Because of this, our online traffic has increased, the online inquiries has increased. We're working with existing customers like Olympus, where we're offering remote licenses so that they can work from home. Olympus, we gave them extra software temporarily so that they could get this work done for COVID-19 respirators. So all this electronic information that we're trying to generate is a way of continuing the education of prospects and customers, letting people see that we are still around, we are still in business, we are still working for our customers with the software development. But what we're trying to do is to get that information across, and at the moment the only way to do that is electronically and online.
No, it's a good point, and the Olympus story you can find on the MTD CNC website. Yep. Very good story, great company, and it's great to see how you've helped them in their mission to produce these ventilator components in a more productive fashion. Now, I think that really sums up the kind of sliding head technology nicely, and some of the innovative software that you provide very well. Do you have any new solutions for fifth axis machines?
Probably one of the biggest one is the ability to use barrel cutters. These types of cutters in full 5-axis mean that you're not taking small steps down the sidewalls. You can take greater step overs, which again is increasing cycle times on finishing complex 5-axis parts by 60, 70, 80%. I think Mark touched on this when he did his live quiz with you. Having that ability to use those, and I think somebody mentioned within the company that in 2021 version, we're not just going to have barrel cutters, but we're actually going to have spherical barrel cutters, so radius on the bottom as well as the radius on the side. So all this innovation is geared around trying to produce parts as accurately, but reducing the cycle times at the same time.
And with the additional radius at the bottom of the barrel cutter, what advantages do we get from that, Ian?
Well, it allows you to be able to not just come down the sidewalls in a greater step over, but also stepping over shallower angles. So where you might have to trace across with a ball nose in fine steps to get your surface finish on a 3D contour, if you've got a spherical form at the bottom of the tool, it means that you can increase your step over that way. So you're not just saving on the sidewalls, you're also saving time on the shallower 3D forms as well.
And to be able to achieve these kind of massive savings, it's impossible to program, or I would imagine it's unless you're a genius, to program some of these programs where you're using all 5-axis simultaneously manually into the machine. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think it'd be impossible. Yeah, I think it'd be impossible, to be honest. It's working out the contact point for even a radius cornered end mill is difficult enough because the contact point changes at different angles on the face, different contact points. So to be able to do that with a barrel cutter that's got maybe an 80 radius on the side of it, I just don't see how you'd be able to do it, to be honest, without the CAM system.
Well, you'd need to be a genius, and if you're a genius capable of programming that, you're in the wrong job.
I was going to say, you probably wouldn't be a programmer either, would you?
No. So I mean, so to kind of really then to reiterate on that, you know, to be able to make or get advantage or make advantage of that particular saving, you really do need your software. Now, that really rounds up and summarises everything that you do. We touched upon iMachining, which is still one of your best-selling products, in my opinion. You know, what else have you got available? What's around the corner, Ian?
Obviously, we're enhancing what we're doing. As regards new products, I'm not always privy to what's coming around the corner. You know, the barrel cutter with the spherical bottom is something that's been mentioned in passing as something that's coming for next year. So all I can guarantee is that whatever we do next will be better than what we're doing now.
That's brilliant. It's evolution for sure.
Yeah.
Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the MTD podcast today. If any of my listeners or our listeners have enjoyed this podcast or have any questions, please send them in. And don't forget to subscribe to the MTD podcast, which you can do on your iPhones, smartphones, and you can also listen to it from the MTD website. Ian, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Gio.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.